Invisible architect Priya Kapoor adjusted her glasses as she reviewed the quarterly financial projections. The soft glow of her laptop illuminated her face in the otherwise dark home office. It was past midnight, but sleep remained a distant luxury. Outside her window, Mumbai's skyline twinkled like scattered diamonds against the night sky. A view she barely noticed anymore. "Still working?" Vikram's voice startled her. He leaned against the doorframe, loosening his tie after another late industry dinner she hadn't been invited to. "Someone has to make sure these numbers add up," Priya replied, not looking up from her screen. "The Singapore expansion needs a complete financial overhaul before the board meeting." Vikram sighed, the kind of exhale that carried unspoken disappointment. "You worry too much. The board trusts me." "They trust the projections I create," she corrected gently. 7 years of marriage had taught her how to navigate his ego. "The ones you present," crossed the room, placing a perfunctory kiss on her forehead. "That's why we're the perfect team. You build the scaffolding, I sell the vision." His phone buzzed. Checking it, his expression shifted subtly, a micro-reaction Priya had become attuned to noticing. "I need to take this." As he left, Priya turned back to her work. Meridian Tech Solutions had been her brainchild as much as Vikram's. While completing her MBA, she had identified the gap in enterprise software solutions that became their company's foundation. Vikram, with his charisma and engineering background, became the face of the venture. Priya orchestrated everything. Behind the scenes, the business model, the financial architecture, the strategic partnerships. The early days had been beautiful in their struggle. Working from their tiny apartment, sharing midnight inspirations and morning coffees. Falling asleep surrounded by business plans and prototype sketches. Back then, Vikram looked at her with wonder. Not through her. Priyar. Waya minimized the spreadsheet and opened the company's ownership documents. Her name beside Vikram's, 51% to his 49%. A decision they had made for tax purposes when they incorporated. "It doesn't matter whose name has the higher percentage," he had said. "We're one unit." The memory felt like an artifact from another. Life morning arrived with Mumbai's characteristic humidity. Priya prepared for the day, selecting a modest but elegant navy blue suit. Vikram preferred when she dressed conservatively for office events. "Let's keep the attention on the product, not the people," he'd say. While he donned designer suits that emphasized his athletic build, at the office Priya navigated through the busy corridors of Meridian's headquarters. Employees greeted her with respect, but not the reverence they showed Vikram. To them, she was the founder's wife who handled some financial aspects, not the architect of the company's entire operational structure. "Mrs. Kapoor, Mr. Vikram, asked to reschedule your strategy meeting," said Roheen, Vikram's executive assistant. "He's in a call with potential investors from Tokyo." "I scheduled that meeting 3 weeks ago," Priya replied. Frustration edging into her voice, Rohini offered an apologetic smile. "He mentioned something about Natasha needing to present the marketing analytics during that slot instead." Natasha Sharma. The new marketing director hired 6 months ago, young, brilliant, with credentials from London Business School and a dazzling smile that seemed exclusively reserved for Vikram, Priya said. "Please tell my husband I'll update the financial models without his input." Then, back in her office, smaller than Natasha's despite her founder status, Priya stared at the family photo on her desk. Taken 3 years ago at Meridian's first major product launch, Vikram's arm around her waist, both of them beaming with the pride of shared accomplishment. The woman in that photo still believed in partnership, still thought her invisibility was a strategic choice, not an erasure. Priya opened her drawer and removed a leather-bound notebook. Inside were her original business plans for Meridian, handwritten during late-night sessions when the company was just a dream. Alongside were her current notes, observations, patterns, discrepancies in Vikram's behavior and business decisions. She may have become invisible, but she saw everything, and she was beginning to see a future where invisibility might become her greatest strength. Fracturing foundation, the expansion meeting dragged into its third hour as Vikram dominated the conference room, his voice rising and falling with practiced charisma. Priya observed from her seat at the far end of the table, noting how the board Members nodded along to his grand vision for Meridian's growth across Southeast Asia. The proprietary algorithm we've developed will revolutionize how enterprises manage their data infrastructure, Vikram declared, gesturing toward the sleek presentation displaying projected revenue streams. Pri cleared her throat softly. Those projections assume a 60% adoption rate in the first quarter. Our historical data suggests 40% is more realistic. The room fell silent. Vikram's smile remained fixed, but his eyes narrowed slightly. My wife is always cautious with numbers, he said, his laugh dismissing her concern. But caution didn't build Meridian, ambition did. Board member Rajiv Malhotra leaned forward. I'd like to hear Mrs. Kapoor's assessment in more detail. Before Priya could respond, Vikram smoothly interjected. We'll include a conservative projection in the SD follow-up materials. But continuing with our strategy, Priya made careful notes as Vikram redirected the conversation. This pattern had become increasingly common over the past year. Her input minimized, her expertise sidelined. What began as occasional interruptions had evolved into systematic exclusion. After the meeting, she approached Vikram in the corridor. We need to discuss those projections. Investors will ask questions about the discrepancies. He checked his watch. Not now, Priya. I have a dinner with the Singapore team. His phone buzzed, and his expression softened as he read the message. Natasha's prepared a comprehensive market analysis. She'll be joining us on a strategic planning dinner. Shouldn't the CFO be there instead? Vikram's face hardened. This is about market positioning, not finance. Should get some rest. You look tired. As he walked away, Priya felt a familiar hollowness expand in her chest. The same sensation she'd experienced last month when budget meetings were rescheduled without her knowledge, and the month before, when her name was omitted from a major press release about the company's new direction. That evening, Priya declined her driver's offer to take her home, and instead walked through the financial district, letting the warm evening air envelop her. She stopped at a small cafe she and Vikram used to frequent in the early days, when they couldn't afford proper office space and would plot Meridian's future over endless cups of chai. Mrs. Kapoor, haven't seen you in. AJ's greeted the owner, Farhan. It's been too busy, she replied, settling into a corner table. Your husband was here last week with a colleague, said business is booming. Priya's hands stilled around her teacup. Last week, Vikram was supposedly in Delhi for meetings. Farhan nodded. Tuesday evening, he and the young lady stayed until closing. Passionate discussion about marketing strategies, I gathered. That night, unable to sleep, Priya accessed Meridian's expense system. Vikram's corporate card showed charges at the Oberoi Hotel Bar in Mumbai, not Delhi, on Tuesday. The following morning, 2 breakfast charges at the same hotel. The evidence compiled slowly over the following weeks. Late-night text messages. Vikram tried to hide. Unexplained schedule changes. Meetings that ran suspiciously late when Natasha was involved. The lingering scent of unfamiliar perfume on his suits. At Meridian's quarterly all-hands meeting, Priya watched from the sidelines. As Vikram introduced Natasha to lead a presentation on their new market positioning, Natasha has become instrumental to Meridian's vision, Vikram announced to the assembled employees. Her fresh perspective is exactly what we needed to break into new markets. Priya observed Natasha's confident stride to the podium, her perfectly tailored red dress, a stark contrast to Priya's understated gray suit. What caught her attention, however, wasn't the presentation, but the subtle interactions between her husband and the marketing director, the lingering glances, the unnecessary touches when passing materials. The private smiles exchanged when they thought no one was looking. That evening, Priya received a text from Vikram. Strategy dinner running late. Don't wait up. Instead of replying, she drove to the restaurant where the strategy dinner was supposedly taking place. From her car, she watched Vikram and Natasha exit together, his hand resting intimately on the small of her back as they walked to his car. Priya followed at a distance, they drove not to the office for additional work, but to an upscale apartment building in Bandra. She watched them disappear inside together, Vikram's familiar laugh carrying across the quiet street. Something shifted inside her that night, not heartbreak, but clarity. The pain was there, undeniable and sharp, but underneath it lay something harder and more determined. Back home, Priya went to her office and opened her laptop. She began reviewing Meridian's legal structure, shareholder agreements, and board bylaws. She pulled up the company's code of ethics that Vikram had proudly authored, particularly the sections on conflicts of interest and improper relationships between executives. She made a single call to Zara Hussain, her former roommate from business school now, one of Mumbai's most formidable corporate attorneys. "I need your advice," Priya said when Zara answered. "Confidentially, of course," Zara replied. "What's going on?" Priya took a deep breath. "I need to understand exactly what powers a majority shareholder has when the CEO has violated company ethics policies." The silence on the other end was brief. "But telling, this sounds serious, Priya?" "It is," she confirmed, her voice steadier than she expected. "I've spent years being diminished. It's time to remember who built this empire in the first place." As dawn broke over Mumbai, casting long shadows across her desk, Priya closed her laptop. For the first time in months, she felt something like peace. Not because she had a plan to save her marriage, that ship had sailed. Because she finally had a plan to save herself. And possibly, the process, save the company that had been her first true love. Silent checkmate. The invitation to the Co3's anniversary gala arrived on embossed cardstock, addressed to both Priya and Vikram. As major investors in Meridian, the Co3's expected the company's founding couple to attend together, maintaining the image of united leadership that had become increasingly fictional. "We should coordinate our schedules for Saturday," Priya mentioned, over a rare breakfast they shared. "The Co3's event starts at 7. Vikram barely glanced up from his phone. "About that, I might need to send my regrets. Needs the integration protocols finalized this weekend." "The Tokyo team," Priya repeated evenly. "Would that include Natasha?" His fingers stilled over the screen, among others. "Why?" "Just curious why our marketing director is involved in integration protocols." Priya sipped her tea, her expression neutral. "Especially since I approved Natasha's request for Saturday off last week, for a family wedding in Pune." The lie hung between them, neither acknowledging its presence. Vikram recovered quickly. "Must have mixed up my meetings then. I'll check my calendar again." "Do that," Priya said, rising from the table. "The Kotharis specifically requested both of us attend. Dhruv mentioned wanting to discuss increasing their investment." At the office, Priya moved with purpose. Her meeting with Zara 2 weeks prior had crystallized her options. She had been methodically building her case ever since. Today's agenda included a seemingly innocuous lunch with Aditya Sen, Meridian's most senior board member and an old family friend. They met at a quiet restaurant away from the financial district. After exchanging pleasantries, Priya guided the conversation toward business. "I've been concerned about some of the operational decisions being made recently," she said carefully. "The aggressive expansion timeline, in particular." Aditya nodded thoughtfully. "Vikram has always been ambitious. It's what makes him an effective leader." "Ambition isn't the issue," Priya replied. "It's the increasing gap between projected results. In reality, our last 3 product launches missed targets by significant margins." She slid a folder across the table. Inside were meticulously compiled analyses showing the growing discrepancies between Vikram's promises to investors and actual performance. "This is concerning," Aditya admitted, studying the numbers. "But normal growing pains for a company of our size." "Perhaps," Priya agreed, "but there's more." She hesitated, then added, "I believe personal factors may be clouding Vikram's judgment." "What did you choose?" Expression remained carefully neutral. "What kind of personal factors?" "The kind that violate our code of ethics regarding executive conduct?" She met his gaze steadily. "The kind that could become a significant liability if they became public." Understanding dawned in Aditya's eyes. "I see. And you have evidence." Of this, Priya nodded once. "Substantial evidence, which I hope never needs to be presented to the full board." The conversation shifted then to reminiscences about Meridian's early days, but the message had been delivered. As they parted, Aditya squeezed her hand. "Your father would be proud of your business acumen, Priya. He always said you were the smartest person in any room. Back at the office, Priya reviewed the presentation for next week's board meeting. Officially, it was Vikram's presentation, a routine quarterly update. Unofficially, it would be the foundation for what came next. That evening, she met with Rohan Kapadia, Meridian's head of legal affairs, under the guise of reviewing intellectual property protections. After covering the official agenda, she casually mentioned a hypothetical scenario. If a CEO were found to be in violation of the company's ethics policy, what would be the standard procedure? Rohan looked surprised. Depends on the violation. Minor infractions might warrant a warning. Major ones could trigger a board review. And if the CEO had engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a direct report, Rohan's expression shifted from surprise to understanding. That would constitute a major violation, especially if the relationship wasn't disclosed and created conflicts of interest. He studied her carefully. This is no longer hypothetical, is it? Let's continue treating it as such, Priya suggested. Would such a violation be grounds for immediate removal with sufficient evidence and a majority board vote? Yes, Rohan confirmed. The shareholder agreement includes moral turpitude clauses specifically to protect the company from reputational damage. Priya nodded, thanking him for his insight. One more piece of the puzzle in place. Saturday evening arrived. Teria prepared for the Kathri's gala with meticulous care. She selected a deep emerald silk sari that she knew highlighted her elegant figure. Her jewelry, understated but unmistakably expensive gifts from her father that predated her marriage. Vikram, surprisingly, was also preparing to attend. His earlier Tokyo team excuse had evaporated when Dhruv Kathri personally called to confirm their attendance. "You look beautiful, Vikram," said as they waited for their driver, his tone suggesting mild surprise, as though he had forgotten this fact about his wife. "Thank you," Priya replied. She noticed him checking his phone repeatedly, his attention clearly elsewhere at the gala. They performed the role of devoted couple flawlessly. Years of practice had made them excellent actors. Priya chatted with investors, while Vikram charmed potential clients. To outsiders, they appeared the perfect partnership. During dinner, Priya excused herself and walked to a quiet corridor to make a call. She had timed it perfectly. Zara answered immediately. "Yes, is prepared," her attorney confirmed. "The documents will be delivered to board members Monday morning. The emergency meeting is set for Tuesday." "The other matter?" Priya asked. "The forensic accountant's report is complete. The financial discrepancies are documented and ready to present if needed." Priya thanked her and ended the call, turning to find Dhruv Kathri standing nearby. "Planning a surprise?" he asked with a knowing smile. "Something like that," Priya acknowledged. "How much have you guessed?" Dhruv had known her father for decades before his passing. Now, his insight into corporate politics was legendary. "Enough to know that next week will be interesting," he replied. "And enough to assure you that my investment in Meridian is, more specifically, an investment in you." Returning to the gala, Priya watched Vikram working the room, oblivious to what was coming. On Monday, he would leave for a 3-day trip to Dubai with Natasha, a trip he had tried to disguise as separate business functions until Priya accidentally discovered their identical flight itineraries. The perfect opportunity. For what came next as they drove home that night, Vikram reached for her hand, a rare gesture of affection. "We make a good team, don't we?" he asked, the question tinged with something like nostalgia. Priya allowed him to hold her hand, knowing it would be the last time. "We always did," she agreed. That was never the problem. In the darkness of the car, she permitted herself a small smile. The chess pieces were arranged perfectly. In 3 days, everything would change. Boardroom revolution. The Meridian Tech Solutions boardroom had always intimidated with its grandeur, 20-foot ceilings, floor 2 ceiling windows overlooking Mumbai's skyline, and a massive teakwood table that Vikram had imported from Bali. Today, however, Priya found the space energizing as she adjusted papers at the head of the table, Vikram's usual position. "Are you certain about this timeline?" Zara asked, reviewing documents beside her. "We could wait until he returns." "Absolutely not," Priya replied. "The Dubai trip is the final piece of evidence. Right now they're checking into the St. Regis using adjacent rooms booked on company funds. Board members began arriving, confusion evident on their faces upon finding Priya occupying the chairman's seat. Aditya Sen entered last, nodding subtly to Priya before taking his place. "Thank you all for accommodating this emergency session," Priya began once everyone was seated. "I recognize the unusual nature of this meeting, called without the CEO's presence." Sunil Mehra, one of Vikram's strongest allies on the board, frowned. "Where is Vikram? Shouldn't we wait for him?" Mr. Kapoor's absence is directly related to why we're here, Priya replied, her voice steady. She distributed folders to each board member. "What you're receiving contains evidence of multiple violations of Meridian's ethics code and fiduciary responsibility by our current CEO." The room fell silent as the board members opened their folders. Priya had prepared the contents meticulously, flight records showing Vikram and Natasha traveling together on separate business trips, hotel receipts, time-stamped photos, and financial records highlighting concerning patterns of expenditure. "This is troubling," murmured Lakshmi Patel, the former finance professor who had backed Meridian's seed round. "The personal indiscretions, while disappointing, wouldn't alone warrant this meeting," Priya continued. "However, coupled with the financial misrepresentations and the systematic undermining of company protocols, they represent a pattern of behavior that threatens Meridian's stability." She activated the presentation screen, displaying a series of charts. These graphs demonstrate the growing disparity between Mr. Kapoor's representations to investors and actual company performance. The Singapore expansion projections were inflated by 37%. The last product launch missed revenue targets by 42%. Rohan Kapadia, head of legal, added, "The company's ethics policy, drafted by Mr. Kapoor himself, explicitly prohibits undisclosed relationships between executives and their direct reports, particularly when company resources are misappropriated to facilitate such relationships." Sunil leaned forward defensively. "This feels like a personal vendetta dressed up as corporate concern." "I understand how it might appear that way," Priya acknowledged, "which is why I've had independent auditors verify all financial discrepancies." She nodded to an accountant waiting in the corner, who stepped forward to present his findings. For the next hour, the meeting proceeded with clinical precision. Priya had anticipated every objection, prepared for every scenario. When Sunil suggested they hear Vikram's side, she played a recording of Vikram instructing Natasha to alter marketing performance data before the last investor meeting. "I didn't want to present this," Priya said softly. "We need absolute clarity about what's happening." Aditya Sen finally spoke. "What exactly are you proposing, Mrs. Kapoor?" Priya straightened in her chair. "As majority shareholder and co-founder, I am calling for a vote to remove Vikram Kapoor as CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions, effective immediately." The statement hung in the air. Board members exchanged glances, some uncomfortable, others resolute. "Who would lead the company in the interim?" Lakshmi asked. "I would," Priya replied simply. "I wrote our original business plan. I designed our financial structure. I've been involved in every aspect of this company since inception, even when my contributions were minimized." She distributed another document, her proposed transition plan, complete with strategic adjustments to correct Vikram's riskiest decisions. "This isn't a hostile takeover," she clarified. "It's a necessary correction to protect what we've all built." The boardroom doors suddenly swung open. Dhruv Kothari entered, nodding apologetically for his lateness. "Forgive the intrusion. My flight from Singapore was delayed," he said, taking a seat. "Please continue." His arrival shifted the energy in the room. As Meridian's largest outside investor, his opinion carried significant weight. "Mr. Kathri," Sunil appealed immediately, "surely you see this as an inappropriate way to handle internal matters." Dhruv studied the documents before him. "What I see is compelling evidence of misconduct that threatens my investment." He looked up at Priya. "Mrs. Kapoor, if you were to assume leadership, what would be your first priorities?" Priya didn't hesitate. "Stabilizing our core business, realigning our expansion timeline to match our actual capabilities, rebuilding trust with investors through transparent reporting, and launching the enterprise security protocol that's been sidelined for Vikram's more flashy but less substantial projects." Dhruv nodded, satisfied. "I've reviewed Mrs. Kapoor's transition plan in advance. It's sound. More importantly, it's honest about both our challenges and opportunities. He turned to address the entire board. I support the motion. The vote proceeded. Despite Sunil's objections and 2 abstentions, the majority sided with Priya. By 2:17 p.m., Vikram Kapoor was officially removed as CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions. Next steps? Tia asked after the decision was recorded. Security has already been instructed to change access credentials, Priya replied. Human Resources is preparing the formal communication to employees, emphasizing continuity and stability. She paused. And I've arranged for Mr. Kapoor to be notified immediately. In Dubai, Vikram was lounging by the Hotel Pool Cocktail Inn. When his phone buzzed with an official email from Meridian's board. The blood drained from his face as he read it. Seconds later, his phone rang Dhruv, Co-3 calling personally to confirm the decision. Priya had anticipated Vikram would immediately try to return, to challenge the decision, to leverage his relationships with board members. She had prepared for this as well. By early evening, international business publications were running the story. Meridian Tech Solutions announces leadership change. Co-founder Priya Kapoor appointed CEO after board removes husband amid ethics scandal. The office buzzed with shocked whispers as employees digested the news. Priya had arranged for department heads to be briefed before the general announcement, ensuring their support in maintaining operations in what had been Vikram's office. Priya sat at his desk now, her desk responding to messages from concerned clients and partners. Her assistant, Tanvi, entered with another stack of call requests. The press wants statements. And Mr. Kapoor has called 17 times in the last hour, Tanvi reported. Please inform our PR team to use the prepared statement for media inquiries. Priya replied calmly. As for Mr. Kapoor, he can direct any communication through our legal department. After Tanvi left, Priya allowed herself a moment of reflection. She ran her fingers along the edge of the desk-imported mahogany that Vikram had insisted on despite its exorbitant cost. On the credenza behind it sat photos of Vikram with celebrities and politicians. None with her. She opened her laptop and began drafting an email to Meridian's employees. Not a triumphant declaration, but a steady assurance of continuity and purpose. The company would survive this transition, would thrive even. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zara. News is spreading fast. How are you holding up? Priya glanced out the window at Mumbai's skyline. The same view Vikram had enjoyed for years while she worked from her smaller office down the hall. The city was transitioning from day to night, lights beginning to illuminate the darkness. I'm exactly where I need to be, she typed in response. Tomorrow would bring challenges Vikram's inevitable counterattack. Employees choosing sides, investors requiring reassurance. But tonight, in this moment, Priya simply allowed herself to acknowledge what she had accomplished. She had not just reclaimed her company, she'd reclaimed herself. Phoenix rising 6 months after the boardroom coup, Priya stood at the podium in Meridian's expanded headquarters, addressing employees and press at the launch of their groundbreaking enterprise security platform. The product, originally her concept but shelved by Vikram, had quickly become the company's most successful offering. Innovation isn't just about technology, she stated, her voice carrying confidently through the auditorium. It's about integrity in execution. It's about building solutions that genuinely serve our clients' needs, rather than just capturing headlines. From the front row, Zara and Aditya watched with approving smiles. The journey hadn't been easy. Vikram had initially threatened lawsuits and attempted to rally shareholders against her, but faced with overwhelming evidence of his misconduct and the company's remarkable performance under Priya's leadership, his challenges had faded to bitter social media comments that investors largely ignored. Natasha had resigned immediately after the coup. Rumor had it, she'd followed Vikram briefly before moving to Singapore for a fresh start. Away from the scandal, after the presentation, Priya met privately with a group of female tech entrepreneurs she was mentoring through Meridian's new incubator program and initiative created to support women in an industry that often rendered them invisible. The hardest part wasn't taking control, she told them when asked about her journey. It was recognizing that I had the right to do so. That my voice deserved to be heard. Later that evening, as Priya worked late in her office, now redesigned to her taste, With her father's paintings on the walls and shelves filled with books that inspired her, Tanvi brought in a small package that had arrived. Inside was a set of antique brass keys with a note, "To the woman who built her own doors when others were close to her. Congratulations on Meridian's success." It was signed simply, Dhruv. Priya smiled, placing the keys on her desk beside the company's latest achievement award. The divorce had finalized last month with surprisingly little drama. Vikram, facing professional isolation, had eventually negotiated a settlement that left Priya's control of Meridian. Unchallenged, her phone chimed with a message from an old university friend inviting her to dinner, someone she'd reconnected with recently after years of Vikram subtly discouraging the friendship. She typed a quick acceptance. Outside her office window, Mumbai sparkled under the evening sky. The view was the same one visible from Vikram's former office. But Priya saw it differently now, not as a backdrop to someone else's ambition, but as a horizon of possibilities that were hers to explore. The business media had initially framed her story as a scandal or revenge tale. Now they called it a renaissance. Meridian's stock had risen 40% under her leadership. The toxic culture that had festered during Vikram's later years had transformed into something collaborative and innovative. Priya gathered her things, preparing to leave for the evening. On her desk sat the proposal for Meridian's next major initiative, a technological solution she'd conceptualized years ago, but had never found the courage to champion. Tomorrow, she would present it to the board. Not as Vikram's wife or the woman who orchestrated his downfall, but simply as Priya Kapoor, CEO of Meridian Tech Solutions, a woman who had finally claimed her rightful place as she walked through the office toward the elevator. Employees greeted her with genuine respect, not the fearful deference they'd shown Vikram, but the earned regard given to a leader who valued their contributions. Outside, her driver waited to take her to dinner. Priya paused before entering the car, taking a moment to appreciate the cool evening air, the sense of lightness that had become her new normal. She had lost a husband, but found herself, and in doing so, she had built something far more valuable than she had ever imagined possible.